Welcome back to Five Questions. I'm your host, Dustin Peed. I am so pumped to have my guest with you today. Jackie Brewster is just an amazing human being, but even more than that, she just crushes the Enneagram game. And if you know me or you follow me and you're like, who's he always reposting? It's Jackie.
Ah,
And I love everything about the Brewster family. Already know I introduced you to my longtime friend and coach Stephen Brewster. That is Jackie's husband. And so anyway, the five questions today are going to be around the topic of Enneagram because while she is great at a lot of things, this is what she's really great at. And so we're going to dive right in, but I want to just kind of give you a brief bio if you're like, who is this person again? So Jackie Brewster, certified Enneagram coach and experimental specialist, lives in Franklin, Tennessee, my favorite place on earth. Jackie focuses on helping individuals, couples, and groups uncover and discover who they are and how to grow toward health through the teachings of the Enneagram and biblical truth. There's a lot in there, so let's unpack it a little bit. First of all, Jackie, welcome.
thank you for having me.
So I have five questions for you.
Mhm.
I don't know really what order I'm going to go in, but because I've learned to start with why, we're going to start there. Why Enneagram over any other personality profile?
I love this question, and I like why questions too. I recently had a therapist friend talk to me like about the why, and she said, "I never start with why. I always start with what." And I was like, "Oh, that's interesting."
Hmm.
I'm going to stick with the why. Like
Yeah,
I just
I
like
like that
it.
journey for you, but for me, I'm going to
Yeah,
stick with.
I want to go into those questions. Depending on who it is, I might
Yeah.
venture a different way. But for me, Enneagram personality typing system is just so different. It gives us a growth track, and the Enneagram system, when we're using it appropriately, it's not about finding labels to stick on ourselves and then to live those labels out. Instead, it's a tool to uncover and discover the patterns of behavior we developed throughout our lifetime and to start to begin to recognize, are they working for us anymore? How are they showing up? Are they helping us get us where we want to go? Or are they stopping us in our tracks and really causing some big problems in our lives? And so with the Enneagram, there's a growth track. We get to see, it highlights when we're healthy, when we're unhealthy. The average parts of our relation, the average parts of our personality, and where a lot of us just kind of live. This is a lot of like, this is just who I am, parts of the Enneagram. And it's like, no, it's not who you are. Those are just patterns of behavior that you learned to get your needs met, to get love, and to keep yourself safe throughout your life. But you don't have to stay there. And so that is my favorite part of the Enneagram. You don't have to stay there. So I'm
Mm,
not boxing you in. I'm not telling you this is who you are. I'm actually holding space for you to uncover and discover parts of yourself that are causing you to act out the ways of your particular Enneagram number. So,
love it.
yeah, maybe like you boxed yourself in, but I'm not boxing you in, if that
Mm.
makes sense.
Yeah, bonus question to as a kind of a follow up to that. I have a lot of people as I become like an evangelist of the Enneagram. I have a lot of people that ask me a common question is, can my number change? And as
Mm.
I'm hearing you talking, like, hey, we're not boxing you in with this. I do feel that. I feel with other personality profile tests, I feel like, well, this is you. You know what I
Mhm.
mean?
Yes.
Whereas with
Mhm.
Enneagram, especially through the lens of the gospel, I feel like it's easier to walk through of no, you're fearfully and wonderfully made, and
Mhm.
this is the way that you're made,
Right.
and this is the
Mhm.
motivation. So what I tell people is that the reason I love Enneagram so much is it gets down to the motivation of it. It gets down to the
Yes.
why,
Mhm.
right?
Yes.
It gets down to the why more than the what
Mhm.
or even the
Mhm.
how. There's like
Mhm.
so many great ones
Mhm.
out there that focus on the how and they focus
Mhm.
on the what. But I'm a why
Mhm.
person. You know what I
Mhm.
mean? I need
Mhm.
to know. I need to know that.
Mhm. Yes, I agree with you on that. I think that so that the Enneagram number, when you figure it out, right? When you take a test, and from the taking the test, you're going to go explore it more. Because I took a test originally and I was an Enneagram 8, and I was like, yeah, probably I'm really strong, you know? But as I started to read more about the 8 and then my wing 7, I was like, actually, I line up all of my motivation lines up with the 7, not
So
the
there.
8.
Yeah.
Yeah. So where I have had to lean into a lot of 8 traits to survive, to get my needs met, to get love, to keep myself protected, all of those things. That is not the reason why I do it. The heart behind it is I want to know I'm going
Yeah.
to be taken care of. And I've,
Yeah.
an Enneagram 7 is I've had to do all of this stuff by myself all my life, anyways.
Yeah. I want to get to how a person discovers their type because I always have a longer answer than people are happy with when it
Yeah.
comes to that. But before we get there, I kind of want to, before we get too deep in, I want to find out from you when your Enneagram journey began. Like, how did that come about? How was it all of a sudden like, okay, now Jackie's super into the Enneagram and she's devoting her life to it?
Yeah, that's a good question too. So 13 years ago, I had taken my girls for a walk. The twins were 2, if that, maybe. I don't even know. I don't, so maybe, I think they were around 2. Was taking my girls for a walk with my girlfriend, and she has this perfect little girl that sat in her stroller, ate her little goldfish, read her book, sippy cup, everything. My twins are in a runner stroller beating the mess out of each other and then figuring out how to slip out of the stroller and then run through the park. And so
Yeah.
I looked like I was just crazy. And at that time in my life, I think I felt like I was crazy in a lot of ways. I just felt so overwhelmed. And my girlfriend that evening messaged me and just said, hey, I just wanted to let you know that I ordered you a book. And I was like, awesome. I love to get lost in somebody else's story. Yes. Like,
Like,
let
no, you're
me,
gonna get lost in your story.
right? I had no idea. So when I got the book in the mail a couple days later with that weird Enneagram symbol, I was like, or symbol, I'm like, what is this? Like,
Yeah.
this looks like it. This does not look
Is
good,
this Is this anarchy? What's
I
happening?
was super like, I don't know. But my friend was a really strong Christian. So I opened the book up, started to read about it, and I was like, oh, this is I need you need help. Let me help
Mm.
you because I see that you need help kind of book.
Is
So
this
that
Ian
was
Cron?
it wasn't Anne Cron. It was the nope. It was 13 years ago. So it was The Wisdom of the Enneagram by Don Rizzo and Russ Husson. It is my favorite book of the Enneagram.
Love it.
It's my favorite. That's one I use a lot with my coaching. But that book started a journey for me of uncovering and discovering. It finally gave me language to things that I felt were broken, or just not I don't I think that a lot of my early life, I couldn't make sense of things about me. Like,
Mm.
I feel like maybe I'm too much or I'm not enough.
Yeah.
I married at 21, ended up going into ministry with my husband, or he went into ministry and I became the wife of somebody in ministry.
Yeah, we know
And
that.
we had all these children and it didn't look the way that I thought it was supposed to look, and I just felt lost. I'm from New England. We live in the South. I'm a lot, you guys. So I just was like, I finally started to read about myself and I was like, I'm not a lot. I'm me.
That's right.
I'm
Oh, man,
I'm
it's
I
so
am
good.
me. And and so I need to learn how to accept the parts of me that people may have um like wide-eyed me about, you know what I'm saying? Or side-eyed,
Yeah.
wide-eyed, all the eyes about me about that made me feel like I was something other than enough. And so I that was the beginning of this journey, that a lot of therapy, a lot of personal work, self-discovery work, healing work. My family has done a lot of work um, in the therapy realm. And then about 5 years ago, my husband and I decided to uh, venture into our own careers. Like, we didn't exactly know what it was going to look like and
Yeah.
what we thought. And now what it is today is not what we thought it was going to be. And so
Yeah.
it's kind of neat to see, God had his hand on all of it the whole time. But 5 years ago, he encouraged me to go get certified to be an Enneagram coach, and I was like, "Okay." He's like, "This is right up your alley. You love this. This makes sense to you. This is the way that your brain works." I'm like, "Yes." And so I did that, and then I went on and got training on the experiential side. So I'm an experiential specialist. So I help people get into the stories of their life by using different modalities. And so sometimes it's, you know, in a session, it might be like, okay, look around the room and we're gonna shape something that represents how you feel. So there's just kind of some different modalities that I use inside of that. And then from there, wrote a book, designed a card deck, wrote another book, have a thriving coaching business, and I absolutely love what I get to do with people.
Yeah. Oh man, we love it too. It's so encouraging. I've had you come and speak to our staff. We were actually just talking. We were going through, because it's February and the love month. We were going through your post on how to love each number,
Mhm,
and so I walked our entire staff through that this past week, and we've had some new staff join our team since then, and we have a couple people that are like that took the test, and we're going to get into that in a minute. But
mhm,
me and my fellow leaders on the leadership team are all like, we need to get Jackie back here. It's been a minute, and
mhm,
we got some new people up in here, and because I,
mhm.
I haven't even touched all the triads and the lines, and we haven't even touched that. We're still just trying to get people to understand like the Enneagram and who they are.
Right, yes.
And it's
Mhm,
so helpful. I mean, the content, it's actually fun. I've never told you this before, so I'll tell you right here on this recording that when you send out your text every single week of new content,
mhm.
which is amazing, by the way. If you're watching, you need to get signed up on that text list. I'm sure you can do it at our website, which I'll plug at the end. But when you send that out, is the exact same time we're sitting down to meet as a staff every
Oh,
single
that's
week.
really cool. That's really
So
cool.
I
Mhm,
try to I try to come more prepared than that.
mhm,
So I'm usually taking your one from a couple of weeks ago and
mhm,
using it in the staff meeting. But
mhm.
oh man, it's so good. Anyway,
Yeah.
I could talk about that forever. Um, so let's talk about how a person can discover their Enneagram type. This is a
Mhm.
question that I get all the time. People are like, "Well, I assume there's a test,"
Right.
and I have my answer that I typically give them, but this is about you. So why don't you walk us through how a person discovers their Enneagram type?
Mhm. Right. So a test is usually where I do have people start so that we have some type of framework to go on. But like I said a couple minutes ago, I tested as an 8, but then as I dove into the content and started to look at the motivation, it didn't line up. And so a personality typing test, regardless of whether it is Enneagram, Myers Briggs, or all the other wonderful tests out there, they are not a blood test. So they are not 100% accurate.
Yeah.
They are only going to be as good as the awareness you have of yourself in your honest answers. So if you are answering the questions how you think you should, how you want to be perceived, or how you think people, you know, think you should answer the questions, or you're asking other people to answer the questions for you because you don't know how to answer the questions,
Hmm.
I don't know that you're going to get a super accurate picture of yourself. And
Right.
so I do, though, recommend uh, an Enneagram test to begin with, just so you have some type of idea around, okay, so these are my top 3 scores. And this is the question I get all the time. So am I all 3 of those numbers?
Yeah.
And I'm
Yeah.
like, "No, those are the top 3 scores, and then it's your job to go do the work for yourself
Yep.
and start to dig into those 3 numbers and ask yourself, what is true about this? Does this resonate with me?" When we're looking at motivation, because that can be a little bit tricky, like, "What are you guys talking about with motivation?" It's the why you do what you do, and with the Enneagram system, they have messaging that around the early childhood messages. So there's an unconscious childhood message, and I call it a heart longing message. Some other people call it something different, but it's the message that you long to hear since you were little. So those 2 messages are the motivating messages of the Enneagram system. And
Yeah.
that is why your number does not change, because for all of my life, I am always going to have this gnawing at me around, I just want to know and be taken care of.
Hmm.
I just want to know this as an Enneagram 7. And it's not financial for an Enneagram 7. It is much more emotional. I want to know that somebody sees me as worthy of loving. If
Hmm.
somebody sees me as worthy of turning and seeing me
Yeah.
and that I matter to them. And so that is forever. And I've been married for a long time, and that is still the trigger. That is still the fight. That is still the pressure point within our relationship, when it gets triggered, and it gets triggered on dumb things like, "You didn't get me a milkshake when you went to Sonic, you got everybody else one." And he's like, "You
Mhm.
didn't answer your text." I'm like, "But didn't you know? Didn't you just know?" So it's dumb, you guys. But it's the motivating message. So it's that message, and then the unconscious childhood message is a message that each Enneagram number has heard growing up, or they perceived, they took in their environment. They watched facial expressions of body language around different things, and they learned what was expected of them. And so when we look at those motivating messages, we then typically can really nail down types. Those are the messages I use to really nail down types.
Yeah.
Um, and so, what one most resonates with you? And then I do think a lot of the times on that, it is kind of like becoming aware of which one of those is playing out in your life on a daily basis.
Mm.
So,
Yeah.
you know,
People that sometimes I feel like this, but sometimes I feel like this.
right.
And that's when it's always goes back to that motivation. I want to
Mhm,
ask you a follow up question about that. And this is just strictly my curiosity, and I'm open to being wrong. But do you find that I tell people that when they take the tests and they get that top three, that more than likely, what I've seen when people show me their test results,
mhm.
more than likely, two of those three numbers are side by side,
I'm thinking through that. Yeah.
and that you
Mhm.
typically see.
Oh,
You typically see, like, so when you took it, you tested as an 8, but then you started looking over at the 7, and you're like, well, actually, I'm a 7.
right.
I see, maybe it may not be all the time, but I see that trend in the people
Yeah.
that are showing me their test results, is that they might test
Hmm.
as a 7, an 8, and a 2, right?
Yeah.
But then they're going to look at it and they're going to go, it's probably one of those two that are side by side, and you just wing toward that's probably your stronger wing.
That's great. I honestly haven't paid attention to it enough to even be able to know.
Okay, we'll start because I
Um,
want to know if I'm right.
yeah, well, I will. I will totally start paying attention to that. I'm thinking through a lot of the times when my clients come to me, um, I'm not looking at test results.
Yeah,
I just do a lot of,
just listening to them.
yeah, yeah, I
Yeah,
do a lot of, and usually they're like, I think I'm this or this. Um, Yes, there's probably some truth to that for sure. Um, and then there's the other ones that I'm like, I'm either a 1 or a 6 or a 1 or an 8, or,
yeah, and
or a 2 or a 7,
then you
or
get into
2
those
or a
lines.
9.
Yeah, you
Yeah,
get into
so
those lines of like, okay, well, that's probably because you're really operating out of health a lot of times, and so you're seeing some of these
mhm,
tendencies, or you're
yeah.
operating out of stress a lot of times, so you're seeing
Or
those tendencies.
yeah, or we're looking at counter types in that, which is a whole nother conversation. But yeah, I don't know. I will totally start to pay attention, and I will follow up with you about that.
Okay, yeah, I
That's a
gotta
great question.
I gotta know. I've started telling people, not necessarily that it's gospel truth, but I've just been telling people, like, here's what I've started noticing
Yeah.
with test results, because I'm not as good as you. I have to at least have a baseline of a test
Mhm,
result, and then we can talk about it. But I tell people the same thing about the test, that just because some people take the test and they're like, I know what I am now. I'm like,
mhm. Yeah.
no, I don't know if you do. Let's really let's get
Yes.
into it. Let's
Yes.
get into
My
it.
first call with most clients is like, "Okay, let's make sure. Let's make
Yeah,
sure."
let's make sure.
Yeah.
Let's get into that.
Yeah.
My third question is, what's the biggest misconception about the Enneagram? I know there's a
Oh,
ton of them, but what's the biggest?
um, that that the memes that you see are how people act.
You're right. You're
I
right.
hate the memes. I
You're
hate
right.
them. I love them because 'cause they're funny,
Yeah.
but when I'm doing, like, the authentic work with clients, um that's what when I'm like, "No, no, no, that's not true," or, "Well, yes, when you're not healthy, you definitely act like that,"
'Cause we're
like,
focusing the memes are focusing on the behavior, and the Enneagram
yes.
doesn't focus on the behavior. The Enneagram focuses on the why, focuses on the
Yes.
motivation.
Well, and the meme is focusing on the average behavior, the average level of
Yeah.
health. So not or even the lower average. I'll say I'll give you that too, but it's not focusing on the healthiest version of that number at all.
Mm-mm.
Like
Nope.
memes do not show you that. They're going to show you um the 2 bringing a puppy in a casserole to a friend that didn't ask for it, you know? And
Yeah.
you're like,
It
"Well,
is funny
yeah."
though.
I know, I know. They are funny. My When I first started, writing books, the publisher was like, "Can you just do more funny things?" And I said, "I'm no, I can't because I
Yeah,
wanna teach it and I want my work to be, truthful and I want people to grow from the work that I do. But if I do memes, then I don't think I'm helping anybody, but I love
yeah,
the people that do memes because they do
yes.
make us laugh and we do share those things and,
Oh, 100%.
yeah.
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 I love, and one of the things that you put on your Instagram quite a bit is, uh, here's what's the ideal vacation or the favorite 90s
Mhm.
sitcom
Yeah.
for Enneagram numbers or whatever. And in the same way, let's dive into this for a second, because in the same way,
Mhm.
I will often message you and go, man, I wing in here on this one, or
Mhm.
I'm lining over here on this one because they're very rarely me. And as I'm talking
Mhm.
to people, especially my fellow coworkers, about the Enneagram, they're like, well, that's not me. So maybe I'm not my
Right.
number. And I'm just like, no, no, no. You're seeing the behavior. Everyone's behavior is different. Everyone's
Yes.
choices are different. Everyone's
Yeah, and y'all
preferences are
and
different. Like,
how am I supposed to know what your favorite rom-com movie is? For all of
exactly.
the 4s in the entire universe, how would I
Exactly.
know what it is? I'm
Exactly.
just basing those
Like, you put
those
"You've
are
Got Mail" on somebody else's, and I was like,
oh, right.
"No, that's, like, mine and Sarah's, like,
Isn't
we're in
that
that's
so
us."
funny? Yes, I do them on Saturdays.
Mhm.
They are probably my hardest posts
I
because I
bet.
feel like I can't hold space for everybody in
Yeah.
them.
Yeah.
And so, but people do really like those posts and they do really well.
Yeah.
And I do think it's fun,
It's a
especially when
great
you
conversation starter.
yes, when you like, I think I did The Office or The Office is I think The Office is coming out next month. And, I know it's an old show, you guys, but I just didn't get into it till now. So now I'm like,
No,
"Oh my"
it's still a thing.
it's so funny. Or that Abbott Elementary.
Oh, I don't know that one.
Oh,
I
you
gotta
have
get into
to
that.
oh gosh.
Alright,
Yes,
I'm
it's
ready.
funny. It's that kind of humor.
Okay.
Um, but yeah, those are always fun. I love it when people talk back and tell me I got it wrong.
Yeah.
I love it. I
Yeah.
do. Like, I'm not like other people on socials that are like, "I'm so offended that you said that." I'm like, "Tell me why you think I got it wrong. Tell me from your perspective, because I am always a student. I
Mm,
wanna learn. I wanna learn from you guys. I wanna learn from everybody, and I don't know, like, I know what I know, but I don't know what I don't know, and everybody's human experience is different. So
yeah,
just because you're a 4, that doesn't mean that I've got 2 sisters that are 4s. I have a half sister and a full-blooded sister, so we were not raised all together. And then they're both 4s. But if I put the 3 of you guys up together, you're going to have different experiences and different likes. And there might be some things that are like, yes, yes, yes. And then there's other things
mhm,
like, oh, really? That's
yeah,
interesting.
yeah.
So, um,
I had that recently. I posted on my blog, Confessions of an Enneagram 4, just because, we love our feelings. And I was just like,
mhm,
let's just get them all out there.
yeah.
And there's a friend of mine at one of our volunteers at the church that's a
Mhm,
4, and we have a lot of commonality. And even when she read it, I was like, what did you, I'm like, I'm interested
mhm.
how much similarity was there. And she's like, yeah, about half of it.
Yeah,
And
yeah.
I was like, oh, okay.
Yes. Well, the self-preservation for is actually long-suffering, and they don't want to expose their feelings. That's
Yeah,
why
that's
they
not me.
mistype as 3s.
Yeah.
So that's there's that battle that happens in
Mhm.
there. So, yeah, because I think it's like, I'm a 7, so I'm like, doesn't everybody think about things like this? And then I see other 7s, and I'm like, why do they care about that? Or what
Yeah.
you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like, what?
Exactly.
That is so weird. So I love the fun Saturday things that I do, but I really like it. So if you guys follow me and you don't agree, know that I like to know that you don't agree,
Yeah.
and I like to hear it. Yeah, I don't know
Yeah.
why.
Yeah, and if it's me posting something and you don't agree, I'm gonna need you to
Yeah.
really think about it before you tell me. And if you conjure up the nerve to tell me, it's gonna need to be completely private. Let's not go public with this. So
I love it. It's so
so,
funny, right? It's just I'll
yeah.
tell you what gets me is, ones, and I love the ones. So if you're a 1 and you listen to my stuff and you've corrected me, I'm totally not offended.
Mhm.
But I have a lot of people that have eyes on my content, and there's still mistakes,
Mhm.
and they are
Oh,
fast.
yeah.
They're
Yeah.
like, that is not the way that you spell that word. That happened this week." And I'm like, "There's 3 people looking at this. How come it should be compliant and you
Right.
guys put complaint about this group?" I'm like, "They are not the complaint group. We cannot
Mhm.
say that."
Can't say that.
But
That's so
yeah.
good. I love
Yeah.
it. All right. Last question, which probably is a big answer, but just for the person who's just beginning to kind of explore and understand what this Enneagram thing is, where can the Enneagram knowledge best be applied?
That's good. Okay, so this is my passion. This is my passion, around the Enneagram. I want you to become aware. I want you to acknowledge, and I want you to make decisions around pivot toward growth. Okay. So when we're looking at this, the awareness piece, what do you do with this information? You start to become aware of how these patterns are showing up in your life. So if you look at an Enneagram one, and you find that there's a lot of perfection inside of your story, and you really hold people to high standards, and you find yourself judging people very quickly or getting really frustrated. You might even not recognize it as judgment, but you're getting really frustrated that people are doing it differently or see things differently. It's like right there, you want to pause, like, okay, what about this is making me feel this way? What about this is causing me distress? Am I putting my expectations on other people and I've never voiced it to them? Or I have voiced it to them and they don't agree and they're not going to they don't care that I think that because they're not gonna live by that.
Yeah.
So I think it's the awareness. We start to really recognize patterns of behavior. Within the Enneagram system, that is what I'm looking at, you guys. All day long, all I'm looking at is patterns. I'm trying to figure out and hear and listen and decipher through patterns, 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 patterns. Um, because these patterns of behavior we have used as coping strategies to get our needs met, to keep ourselves safe, and to get love in our life. And so, as you become aware, you can then acknowledge your own story. So, this is not acknowledging how somebody else treated you, or how somebody else talked to you, or how somebody else did whatever. I want you to acknowledge the role you're playing in your own story. So, acknowledging your own part of this, like, okay, what am I feeling? Why am I feeling this? Did I have any part in the situation that would make me feel this way? So you're starting to acknowledge, okay, my own role in this. I can see how this went sideways, whatever, you know. And then from there, you have an opportunity to pivot towards growth, or you have an opportunity to stay, or you have an opportunity to slip back towards unhealth. But it's really paying attention to what's going on in your own story. The only way we can do this is awareness. Awareness is the key to change.
Yeah.
And so we have to go slow. Awareness takes time. I always say it takes about 3 months of you recognizing patterns. And then over the course of the next 3 months, about 6 months, we might be able to stop before we act. And then after that, typically we can kind of harness them. We can grab a hold of them and begin to really understand where they're coming from, why they're happening, what's causing me to react this way. Um, in like a real example, because sometimes this feels like, what are you talking about? But a real example is in my own life. So my kids were, I was like doing a video shoot here last year, and Stephen was traveling, and so the twins they're 13, they're joking around, acting a fool, whatever. And I was super stressed, and I reacted. I was like, that's enough. And I just yelled at them. I was like, that is enough. I can't take it anymore. And they were like, what are we doing? And I was like, I kind of grabbed it and I was like, y'all aren't doing anything. I don't like the way that this is making me feel. I feel stressed. You guys are being silly and goofy and loud. It's causing me to like kind of not hear what's happening in my head. So I reacted to them and then quickly pulled it back and said, you know what? I'm going to eat my dinner in my room because you guys are not doing anything. I'm overstimulated and I need to take a break.
Hmm.
And so that was like the awareness of what was happening. Because typically I would have made it their fault that I felt stressed,
Yep.
if that makes sense. So that's
Total.
kind of real talk around the work that the Enneagram does offer around awareness.
Yeah. I mean, you're describing an exact scenario that happened in my house last night, where
Mhm.
we were winding down for the evening. The kids were playing at the kitchen table. They were playing a game. and I was trying to look something up on the internet, and it was so loud, and I kept asking them to be quiet, and finally I was just like, enough,
Mhm. Yeah.
but it wasn't them, and they looked at us like, they looked at me like, what are we doing? And I'm like, you're being kids. You're
Mhm.
doing kid things, and that's totally acceptable. It's
Yeah.
not on you, it's on me, and I need to process that for a second.
Mhm.
So,
Yeah. Yes.
man, I could talk about this stuff
Mhm.
forever
Me
with
too.
Jackie.
Mhm.
Um, and yeah, so many things I want to talk about, but for time's sake, and I don't want to give everything away because Jackie's time and knowledge is so extremely valuable. Here's what I will say. um on top of following her on Instagram right here at Enneagram with JB, and checking out everything that she has to offer on her website, enneagramwithjb.com, I would, if you're a leader watching this, even if you're like mid-level management, get Jackie in front of your team for at least a day. It is a game changer. And if you watch my 5 questions, you know that culture is a huge deal to me, and it's something that I preach and practice quite a bit. And introducing this Enneagram stuff to your team radically improves your team's culture. Um, I talk about mental health on here. It radically improves your mental health. I talk about creativity on here. It radically improves your creativity because you remove all the fluff, and you can kind of
Mhm.
understand like, oh, this is what I'm here to create. It just, there's so many things that it affects. I know she just kind of scratched the surface of what Enneagram knowledge can be applied to, but it's really everything that I'm talking about here on my channel and more. So yeah, hire Jackie to come in for the day. I give you a money back guarantee. If she comes in and you're like, this was not good, just let me know and I will cover the cost of it, because it is. I promise you, it will be worth it. Jackie, thank you so much for your time. As always, you're so generous with your time, and just the knowledge is so, so good. Thank you so
Thanks.
much.
Yeah, thanks so much for having me.
Yeah. All right. Well, so like and subscribe, ring the bell, all the things for this on the YouTubes, and we'll catch you next time on 5 questions.